Okay, Donald Duck Visits Japan. I've already done my 1-minute review for Tic Tac Talk. This is one of those books where, if you like the premise, you're going to like it. If you don't like the premise, you're not going to like it. A manga artist tells the story of the three Caballeros visiting Japan and learning about Japanese culture and getting into hijinks. That being said, there are some really neat things done plot-wise. I think this is a really good example of an economic plot. So in one volume, all three of them go on a character arc, and in every chapter, they learn a little lesson about Japan, but the lesson they learn is tied directly into the comedic hijinks and the overarching plot of learning to become good businessmen, learning to care for the customer. Donald and the three Caballeros are basically kind of like losers at the beginning of this. First thing I want to mention is, good idea to have it be the three Caballeros, because I think the three Caballeros deserve some more love. Donald obviously is the main character and has the central focus for most of it. One reason that's a neat idea is the Three Caballeros movie is kind of weird. It basically has no plot. It's basically just a collection of fun, beautifully animated little songs where Donald learns about how cool Central America and South America are, and he makes a couple buddies, and then they sing a song about how they're the best friends ever. But apart from that, it doesn't really have a plot. It's a cultural exchange movie. That's what the Three Caballeros is. So the idea of having the Three Caballeros visit the world and learn about other cultures is a good fit for them. I wish the other two Caballeros got a little bit more time in the spotlight. Donald's mostly the protagonist of most of the stories. Jose, one chapter centers around Jose. Panchito just gets a couple, fun scenes in the background. He adds some comedy because he's so energetic. Like, I wish he got one story centered around his character. But if you love the Three Caballeros, you're going to be interested. Maybe like the last thing I disliked. I don't know if this is a dislike more than just a quibble, but Donald Duck has this ginormous, fat, humongous rear end, and it's so huge. Sometimes it's hard for me to remember that he's supposed to be Donald Duck. So I have to mentally remind myself, oh yeah, this is supposed to be Donald Duck. On the other hand, I kind of like that the artist was willing to go off the Disney model and draw them. I don't know if Meru Okano is a man or a woman's name, but draw them in a unique style that feels authentically like manga. So here's some highlights. So after Donald and the Caballeros screw up at their job working for Duck Furniture, their American boss decides to punish them by sending them to Japan to learn about omotenashi, the ancient Japanese custom of incredible hospitality. So they're going to work, but what he doesn't tell them is that he's sending them to basically work at an old school inn where they're going to be drilled, and his evil plan is when they come home, those Japanese will have taught them to be real hard workers, right? Oh boy, I love it. So cultural stereotypes are great. So some cool little things at Duck Furniture. There's like a cute little Duck secretary who's very professional, and she's secretly a weeb. And when she finds out the boss's evil plan is just to punish Donald and the Caballeros, she's secretly rooting for them to do well so they can expand into the Asian market. I posted a pic of this out of context because it just cracked me up. So Roomba, vroom, 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 and they all intensely think, welcome to the future, Japan, and the innkeeper sneaks up on them. All right, so this is actually kind of like a neat point. So they're Americans. They're used to screwing around at work. They want everything to be efficient. And the intimidating matron of the inn doesn't want them to do things the most efficient way. She wants them to do things the traditional and correct way, because that's our custom. That's how we do things here. That's how we show our love, is by pouring ourselves into this work and not doing a quick slapdash job of it. And then this is used later. So there's a kid at the end, she's bored and her parents aren't watching her, and she's lost something. So while cleaning, Donald finds her hairpin because he's having to do it all by hand. So the point is, if he just sent a vacuum to do it, the vacuum wouldn't have found her lost item. And then Donald also she's bored and she keeps asking him to play with her. So finally he plays with her, and the matron sneaks up on him, and it looks like she's going to be mad at him. But then she makes the point that, no, what you did was you showed hospitality. You took care of one of our guests. So even if you don't strictly follow the rules all the time, what's important is care for the guests, which is what Donald showed, right? Hopping ahead. There's just an example. It's clearly on purpose, right? Like the thinking must be, haha, butts are funny. If I give Donald Duck a big butt, the kids are just going to crack up at that. So the three caballeros are asked to visit Osaka so that they can experience 5-star service at a Japanese hotel. So they're supposed to experience as much of omotenashi as they possibly can. And they kind of like see the sights in Osaka. It's a little lame, but then Donald has this experience that because the hotel is so concerned for caring for their needs and making everything perfect, the three of them kind of like have a buddy bonding experience. It's kind of neat that they're almost played like earnest young men. They're cute, wholesome boys on an adventure around the world together. This I marked because it's just a good example of be the America Japan thinks you are. So the Jose chapter, Jose starts feeling homesick for New York. And what does he miss about New York? Well, what do we Americans do in New York all day long? We eat pizza, we drive sports cars, we come home late at night drunk, and we play basketball. That's just what we do with 100% of our time in New York City. All right, but then what's neat about this is when they have a Japanese cultural lesson, it's tied in with the plot. So he meets the old gardener, and the gardener talks about wabi-sabi, which is the aesthetic of imperfection, a rock covered with moss. It doesn't have to be pristine and clean to be beautiful. It's beautiful because it is what it is. And then Jose makes the connection that, well, that's kind of like my nostalgia. I miss home, and I'm kind of sad about that. And what the gardener tells him is that's not bad. That just means you have big emotions. It's okay to have these big, manly emotions. So obviously the connection is that wabi-sabi, this Japanese cultural aesthetic of kind of like asymmetry or imperfection, like the Zen in letting the world be what it is without you having to fix it, connects to kind of like the feeling of loneliness or sadness of missing your home, but also of like acceptance. You can find peace and acceptance in a sad moment as well. And Jose gets himself put back together. When they do the Japanese ghost story telling tradition, Donald tries to tell a story about a guy with a chainsaw, and they kind of point out, well, that's a different kind of scary than the one we're going for. So Donald, of course, as an American, doesn't get these traditions and is very much an outsider perspective. So for a kid who's never heard any of these things, this is actually a pretty effective way of learning these lessons, because the author doesn't assume you know what these Japanese cultural ideas are, and then they're illustrated very, very directly. There were a couple chapters where they clearly did like a Japanese pun that didn't translate into English. So I wouldn't have minded if the editors had a couple little extra notes to explain some of these. But overall, like, I think a kid would completely understand the Japanese culture stuff that they're trying to convey, because it's explained. It's not just presented without explanation. This is kind of neat because they have to get what's it called, matsukat, some kind of extremely rare Japanese mushroom that's considered a delicacy. The hotel doesn't have it for their honored guest, and so Donald, again showing incredible hospitality, volunteers to go out in the woods and find one of these rare mushrooms. He presents himself as a mushroom expert. He doesn't know a dang thing about mushrooms. So, of course, they get lost in the woods, and they find a hot spring to warm up in while they're out in the cold. And they have this sort of beautiful aesthetic moment where it's just the three of them out in nature alone, looking up at the empty night sky. This is so weird. It's the three caballeros having this very manga-esque Zen moment of beauty and peace in the wilderness in a 2-page spread, and they're all drawn off model. I love it. I dig it. It's so strange and unique. Of course, they get the mushroom and get back, and the day is saved. So, very, very fun. The comedy works. The comedy works based on them not being familiar with the world. There's Donald with his enormous fat ass again, and then screwing up, but then also like trying their best and learning how to actually be good caretakers of their those lazy Americans. We lazy Americans, we all just have to go to Japan and work at an inn to get our fat American rear ends into shape and be hardworking guys who care about the customer like the superior Japanese. That's the message of Donald Duck Visits Japan, and I really dig it. All ages appropriate. Yeah, the only inappropriate thing is that Donald has this massive fat ass. Why? I don't know, but I love it. That's it. 10 minutes. That's the review. Catch you later.